Hey guys, so yeah, that title does not deceive you. I'm pretty much here. I'm here and giving you guys an early review of the first episode of Eden Zero. And from what from what I saw, apparently there's a whole thing where the episode was released early as like a pre-screening or something like that, which hey, I'm not gonna you're not gonna hear me you're not gonna hear me complain about that. I'm all for these pre-screening situations. I think even Fruits Basket's final season did the same thing because I ended up watching that earlier than the intended release date as well. So yeah, um, but yeah, so getting into the episode itself, just for anyone who's new to this, what's the story about? Well, the setting in itself takes place in a hyper realized like space fantasy world where space travel has become the norm and sentient machines and humanity and sentient machines and humanity they pretty much they pretty much live they pretty much coexist alongside each other. And the story itself begins with a girl named Rebecca, who, after landing on Granbull, a planet inhabited entirely by robots, discovers a boy named Shiki living among them, who, as we learn later in the episode, has the ability to harness the power of gravity through a power called ether gear. But after all the robots on the planet become corrupted and start attacking the two, it forces Rebecca and Shiki to escape the planet, beginning their adventures across the soccer cosmos. And yeah, character designs aside, because that's been criticized to hell and back, I've heard it all before. This first episode, just on base premise and concept alone, does share more than a couple similarities of Fairy Tail's first episode, which yeah is expected to see similarities since the original manga, the original source material of the manga was created by Hiro Mashima. But here's where I do something I don't normally do. To those just coming into this series for the first time through the anime, haven't read the manga, and might be thinking of dropping the series just based on off this first episode, because of those minute similarities you see, I need you to stick with it for just a little bit longer before making that decision of whether to continue or drop the series. Because the thing is, as a manga reader, I can tell you Eden Zero is such a very interesting series in the sense where, in the beginning, as we see, it does follow that particular fairy tale tone and formula for at least. But the thing is that's pretty much only for the first chunk of the story. That's only for the first real chunk of the story because that in particular is used as a means to set up the world and characters. That's really all that first chunk that does resemble fairy tale is used for. After that point, though, the tone and the tone and formula of the series, it takes a complete 180 into something more akin to Mashima's like first work, Rave Master, in just how like in just story tone, just everything about Eden Zero, it becomes a lot more distinct away from Fairy Tale, and just yeah, a lot more. There's gonna be a lot more to it that does resemble just Rave Master and storytelling and whatnot. In fact, honestly, I think from I think honestly, even and I can actually tell you from my own experience, I think Eden Zero kind of taps into even darker themes and ideas than Rave Master did. Frankly, like I've read a couple of chapters of Rave Master, and it is a 9 day difference from pretty much obviously Fairy Tail, but it's like Eden Zero, like I think it even taps into a couple of things that take it even darker than Rave Master did. But so yeah, um, but okay. And even and the thing is, even from just getting even getting even getting even getting in order to the chance in order to see all this again and revisit the first episode, um, the introduction of the characters themselves is kind of a weird inverse compared to how Lucy and Natsu were introduced, because in a lot of ways when you look at the dynamic between Rebecca and Shiki in the episode, Rebecca in a lot of ways actually kind of saves it actually kind of saved Shiki in a manner of speaking, because Shiki, he was just it was like it wasn't until met Rebecca that from Shiki had finally felt free, and he felt like he could actually kind of escape from he could actually escape it actually pretty much escape from pretty much Granville, and just go on his own adventure. Um, and and the way and looking and honestly just looking back on this first episode, and like and compared to my experience compared to my experience of reading the first chapter for the first time, Rebecca and Shiki's journey actually takes a lot more of a somber tone pretty much through the idea that this episode is pretty much the last time that Shiki will ever see his pretty much friends alive. And like again, like any plot point where Shiki returns to Granville, they'll pretty much already be dead by then. Like that in itself is already kind of a darker twist to the series, to this series opener than I remember it being, or at the very least, it's an opener that has this it has this weird air of optimism with with a more prominent, like, somber tone, especially when we learn that the robot's corruption was really just a means to get Shiki to leave, because they were already like the robots on Granville, they were already gonna die. So it was just a matter of getting Shiki off the planet, and having him, and just making sure that he pretty much had pretty much a life outside of Granville, because if he stayed there, then he would have just been alone. But thankfully, because Rebecca came to the planet again, Rebecca kind of Rebecca kind of ended up pretty much saving Shiki from a lifetime of loneliness. Like if he had if Shiki had been there when they all died, I think he would have just stayed there. I think, but yeah, stayed there and wallowed in his depression, I think. Um, and it really, and just this whole episode in a lot of ways, and just the idea of the bond between robots, humans, all that, it really touches upon a growing theme you'll pretty much find throughout the series if you choose to continue it, which is the idea of machines being just as humans as human themselves. And sometimes you'll find that machines are even more human than human themselves. Like that's going to be a growing theme you'll find more often than not. And in that sense, the first episode does kind of tap into a very tragic element about Shiki's character as well, which is that he's always been so isolated from humans and the world that he doesn't know how to truly interact. He didn't really know how to truly interact with anyone aside from machines. That is, of course, until pretty much Rebecca came around. However, that is also kind of his biggest strength as well, since him being so much of a blank slate means the character is going to develop and grow based on his experiences. And oh boy, does Mashima do just that. Like he pretty much kind of puts I'm not going to spoil anything again, but he definitely put Shiki through he definitely put Shiki through the fucking ringer uh, a lot during this series, you'll find. um With that said, let's talk art and animation, because when I first heard J.C.Staff had nabbed the license for Eden Zero, I wasn't against it, but still had my concerns. And after watching this episode, I'm a little bit more optimistic coming out of the episode than I was going in. Like the animation is still rougher, a little rough around the edges in places, but the overall product of this first episode came out better than I thought. I think the real test for me will be when we get to the more chaotic parts of the series, like the parts that really dive into the action and the and action of the series and whatnot. I think that's going to be the series' biggest test. And the art style is but the art style was the thing I was the most interested in when just seeing the trailer, because yeah, the thing, because first off, I love how vibrant and colorful that from J.C. Staff like made this world. Like they just splashed just splash this anime with color, and I love it. But maybe even sometimes too bright. Like you can see this being one of those times where people might think, oh, that's too bright. But honestly, I loved it. But even more than that, there's the interesting thing is about this art, about the art style used in this anime, is that there's an aspect to it where it feels like they've kind of like J.C.Staff has kind of recaptured the feel of early fairy tale while still giving it that modern updated sheen, and I really appreciate that more than anything else because it captures the nostalgia factor of Mashima's work, I feel. Where the art and animation really like where the art and but where the art and animation really like took a big dive for me is near the end of the episode. Weirdly, when Rebecca and Shiki are finally in space, and yeah, that's where the whole series just came alive. Like, and anytime I found this from reading the manga, but anytime the series is literally just them traveling through space, that's kind of where the series really comes alive for me, and it just did that just as much in the anime here as well with this first episode, and it also just gives me a lot more confidence going forward with the series. Now, obviously, the thing to kind of talk about is is the large, giant robot woman who appears at the end of the episode. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but let's just say we do dive into her origins pretty early, pretty early on into this in pretty early on. Like you'll find out you get a little bit of a cliff note, but it's one of those things where the more further you go, the pretty much more the more mysteries, the more questions you're gonna have about who this woman is. Let's say that. Like it's kind of, like the woman you see is kind of an end game like boss, I guess you could say. Um, now 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 quickly going over some of the main characters' voice actors here. I'll start with Ziggy, with Shiki's grandpa Ziggy. Like his actor was actually one I was surprised by the most because it wasn't how I had imagined Ziggy would sound, but it still works. And without giving away too much, I'll be curious how the voice will evolve the further down the story we go, because right now, just in the little snippet we got, he is playing it very reserved. And again, I know that's kind of vague. I know what I'm saying is kind of vague, but let's just say that Ziggy does have, even though Ziggy is dead pretty much. He does have a very overlapping role in the series. So you are gonna, even though he is dead, you are gonna see more of him. And yeah, I'll be curious to see how that voice evolves. Um, I'll get into Rebecca in a bit, but I want to jump into Shiki because the thing about Shiki's voice actor is at first he kind of had a little bit of that annoying voice going on, but the more the episode went along, the more I found that the actor definitely found his groove, which is more than I can say for the first time I heard Asked and Black Clover, which, yeah, don't get me wrong, I love Black Clover, but when I first watched it, there were quite a few episodes I had to get through before I actually became accustomed with Asta's voice. So yeah, the fact that it was only a minor inconvenience for me at first is a huge plus, honestly. Um, Now getting into Rebecca so far, I'm not a huge fan of her voice, but it's not necessarily the actor's fault either, as the character's introduction is pretty much that of an atypical, bubbly, sincere, like and emotionally vulnerable girl who obviously gets saddened by what happens with people she cares about. Like it's a standard Mashima trope that we've seen in a lot of like Mashima anime. So in that sense, it's a good choice, but there's just nothing new brought to the performance that stuck out yet. It's and it's something that I can only hope and assume is gonna, like the actress playing Rebecca is gonna get a lot. Is gonna get is pretty much gonna get is gonna get a lot more depth, to work with in her performance as the series goes on. I can only hope that's the case. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, and I really want to know what you guys' thoughts are on the first episode. Again, I really liked it, and like I said, to anyone who's going this first time, just please kind of stick with it. It gets better as the series goes on. Uh, but yeah, guys, that's all I got. Death Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.